Hello everyone, this is Elevated with Dota Alchemy. Thank you so much for tuning in again today, and welcome to the Meta Report. This week's topic is going to be why the Midas Meta is so popular and why it's actually a pretty misleading trend in pubs. If you've played any pubs at all lately, you've probably seen a whole lot of this particular item, the Hand of Midas, or as I like to call it, the YOLO solo player's very best friend. There's a couple main factors that have given rise to this particular Midas meta, and number one is that the item itself has just simply been buffed a lot over the last 6 months to a year's time of patches. It now gives 40 attack speed for 2150 gold, which is almost equivalent to a Hyperstone, 2,000 gold for 55 attack speed for the Hyperstone. So the attack speed is actually very, very high. It's very, very good for quite a few different heroes. But the biggest thing, and this is the biggest change to the overall meta of Dota at the moment, is that creep bounties have been reduced significantly by 3 per melee creep or 15 per wave. So that's just simply a lot less gold that is available to all heroes at all times. In addition to that, each side of the map has lost one of the ancient caps. So that means that there is simply less experience and less gold available in the jungle as well. Finally, the experience required to go from levels 7 to 12 was increased at each one of those levels, which means that getting to that level 2 in ultimate or getting max ranks in a lot of your skills has been slowed down pretty significantly. There's just simply less farm and less gold in particular available for everyone, and that means that heroes that rely on item-based power spikes are going to be slower to get there than most other heroes. The direction for many players has been to turn back to our old and reliable friend, the Hand of Midas, to make up for this lack of gold on the map. Go into pretty much any pub game and you're likely to see at least 2 of these being built on either side, and sometimes you'll see almost every single person in the game picking up a Hand of Midas. The trouble is, this interpretation that Midas is the end-all be-all solution to a slower item meta has a few massive holes in it, and these are holes that a lot of high-level players and pros are exploiting in their pubs. So we're going to take some time and look at these particular styles of play to determine whether Hand of Midas really is the ultimate solution to the current meta, or whether it is more of a niche pickup that is actually losing a lot of people games by going too greedy with their build. A couple major trends stood out to me from looking at about 20 different pro players on Dota2ProTracker.com. Number one, in high-level pubs, Midas is built significantly less often than in lower-level pubs. And number two, most of the high win rate players in this patch, for instance, Paparazzi, Freeze, Zai, Mid1, Tavo, and Mind Control, are not building Midas except on a very few specific heroes in specific scenarios. Instead, most of these players seem to be focusing on up-tempo items and heroes that can fight very early on and can also scale well into the late game if necessary. So a hero like Juggernaut that has a very strong power spike just by having level 6 and has the ability to push early, but can also transition into a late game core. It really shouldn't be that surprising then that if we look at the Divine and Immortal bracket on DotaBuff, that nearly every single hero in the top 20 for win rate falls into the category of either early pusher or early power spike without many items. This trend also holds true when looking at the most picked heroes in this bracket for the most part. In fact, of the top 20 most picked heroes, the ones with the lowest win rate are almost all heroes that would be considered slow to come online because most of them have a very weak laning stage and need a lot of farm to scale well into the mid and late stages of the game. You see, the thing is, if you're playing a hero that has a very large early power spike to fight and push without items, then you're at a massive advantage against heroes that need more time to come online. Because if you don't need the gold, then you don't really care that there's less of it to go around for your whole team. In fact, if we look at all these pushing heroes that have very high win rates right now in Divine and Immortal bracket, it's possible that in an attempt to slow down the meta by reducing the amount of gold on the map, Dota has actually become faster than ever because a hero like Lycan that can simply build straight into a Dominate or Necrobook, no boots or even small starting items, and then all he has to do is just press R to gain haste, a critical damage strike, and mow down towers and team fights. Barely needs any time at all before being able to push and fight for towers. Same thing with Visage. Once he hits level 6, he's suddenly the strongest hero on the map, and there's no items that he needs to really buy to achieve this. Again, this is a hero that builds Helm of Dominator and then can simply just win fights or take towers completely by himself. But what about Lifestealer? I'm sure many of you are probably asking by now. I see my favorite streamer picking nothing but Lifestealer and going Midas Radiance and just farming all game. The thing about Lifestealer is that he's a very niche scenario when it comes to Hand of Midas, and is in fact one of the heroes that most benefits from this item, and one of the heroes that most of these pros in their pubs are building Hand of Midas on. And here's the reason why. Lifestealer is one of those few heroes that becomes naturally incredibly tanky and able to fight without any items. If you think about it, he has built-in lifesteal, he has a slow, he has a built-in BKB, and he has a very, very high strength growth and the ability to do quite a bit of damage simply because of Feast and his good stat gain. He's also a hero that does not farm very well on his own and has no real farming tools outside of items, and also greatly benefits from the pretty high attack speed from Hand of Midas. The Midas Radiance build is a meme on most other heroes, but on Lifestealer it actually fixes his main issues, which is his lack of team fight and lack of ability to push waves and flash farm. Even going this seemingly very greedy build, Lifestealer is one of those heroes that can pull this off because he is just so naturally tanky and can fight early on. It's not like he's a Terrorblade or Anti-Mage that wants to be split pushing all game. Lifestealer wants to fight, and it just so happens that Midas Radiance happens to allow him to also farm while he is trying to fight. If you've been watching any competitive scene Dota in the pro tournaments, it's still definitely possible to run a slower paced late game carry such as an Anti-Mage, Terrorblade, Morphling, or Spectre. It just requires a lot of extra space and good knowledge of how to distribute your farm between heroes. And in the greedy environment of pub Dota, this can be a very frustrating experience to try and pull off. There are some pretty interesting other solutions that pro players are employing besides this early game ability power spike versus item power spike style heroes, such as heroes that generate their own extra gold. Heroes like Bounty Hunter, Alchemist, and Doom all experienced a massive win rate increase upon the release of patch 7.21. And we can probably expect a lot of supports and offlaners with GPM talents to increase in popularity as well. If you think about it, if there is less farm overall on the map, if you can just generate gold out of thin air, you probably have a pretty big advantage over heroes that can't do that. The truth of the matter is, Midas is still a very situational item that needs to be bought for a really legitimate reason. If you're playing a hero that has a strong talent tree and benefits heavily from levels and attack speed while also lacking any real ability to farm, then Midas might just be the item for you. Additionally, we've also seen most pro players only really focusing on getting a Midas if they're playing a safe lane hero like a Lifestealer or Chaos Knight, sometimes a safe lane Nature's Prophet, and basically never on support heroes. Midas is definitely one of those win more items that should really only be in consideration if your hero desperately needs that acceleration, or if you're playing a hero that the only way you could lose the game is if you fall off in the late game, like a safe lane Ursa. It's still almost always better to focus on winning your lanes, team fighting early, taking early towers, and then snowballing the game from there, and Midas is sort of the antithesis of this style of play. That being said, nothing's ever set in stone in Dota, so try things out in your pubs and let us know in the comment section below if you like the current meta or whether you think the Midas meta is majorly overrated. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Hello everyone, and thank you for watching the video. We genuinely appreciate your time and attention spent with us here on the YouTube channel.